Art Deco, Nouveau, Arts and Crafts, mid-century modern, all of these architectural and interior wonders that have stood the test of time. And correct me if I'm wrong, but we all love these historic design styles, or at least one of them, right? So you may be wondering, how did we regress so much from this to what we have today? The evolution of residential design has been a complex journey over the last century, so I really wanted to dive into why exactly that is. And more importantly, most of us live in modern homes, built either in the later half of the 20th century or in the 21st century, so I thought it could be helpful to share ways how to add character to your plain new build home. And if you're new here, hi, I'm Jacqueline, I'm an interior designer with a background in interior architecture, and here we talk about interior design, home decor, if you hadn't already guessed, art and even architecture, and with that being said, let's jump in. So in the past, I think it's safe to say that we had some kind of design flavour. We had the geometric decadence of the Art Deco movement, where cinemas looked like Egyptian tombs and bars looked like they cranked out mint juleps by the second. At the further end of the 20th century, we had mid-century modern, which gave us organic curves, bold colour combos, and an abundance of wooden tones. We even had the 80s where anything went, and I mean anything. It's kind of giving Miami Vice, right? So how on earth did we get from the creative chaos of the 80s to, well, nothing?
Dear Lord, what a sad little life, Jane.
I do want to preface this by saying that UK new build homes are very different to American cookie cutter type homes in terms of square meterage, materials, ceiling heights, and storage space, but they do both have one thing in common. They're both bland boxes when you first get the keys. But it wasn't always like this, and honestly, as an interior designer, I feel like we need to talk about this epidemic of aggressively boring homes. The thing is, I certainly don't think people have suddenly lost taste all of a sudden. It's because modern housing is designed around scalability and resale value, not individuality. Considering the central socio-economic role of housing and the fact that most people spend more than half of their life at home, we know surprisingly little about what or who designs these homes. And before you blame us designers and architects, I'm going to let you in a lesser known fact. Only about 6% of new build homes in the UK are actually designed by an architect. And that's according to data published by the RIBA in 2018. And apparently that's under 5% in the USA, and the estimate for Canada is somewhere between 2 and 5%. Which is obviously shocking. That leaves 90% of the world designed by other groups, so property developers, spreadsheets, and regulations. But if you're scrunching your face up at the screen wondering, well, who is designing these homes and how is that even allowed? Let's get into it. I'm going to speak from a UK standpoint here because I'm not in North America, but I would assume that it's the same kind of similar process. Mass volume housing is actually closer to car manufacturing than actual home construction. By sticking to standard materials and pre-approved design templates, developers have essentially turned home building into an assembly line. It's a system designed to be as cheap and streamlined as possible, where reproducibility is the only metric that matters. That's also why you'll see a lot of these cookie cutter homes have names attached to them, like the elderly, the chestnut, the slightly larger chestnut, or whatever the name they decide to slap on it. And I like to call this a kind of copy and paste formula. So if you're wondering why all new homes look the same, it's because they literally are the same. And any architects that are involved must bow to developers, contractors, agencies, boards, spreadsheets, and regulations, so the entire design gets very watered down. Timescale also comes into play because X amount of houses need to be completed by a certain date. And whilst that's from a financial standpoint from the developer's side, the government has pledged to build 1.5 million new homes in England over the 5-year parliament, so there's also pressure from the government for developers to knock up as many homes as possible, as quickly as possible. Meaning if things are on a short timeline, for developers there's not really time to design Michelangelo-level art here. But the side effect now is that entire estates feel like someone duplicated the same 5 houses in The Sims. There's also these memes going around about new builds being crap in the UK, mainly because the quality isn't as good as it once was. The general consensus is that there's worse insulation, soundproofing is quite awful, and there's a smaller floor space, and the buildings even sometimes fall apart on completion. And may I add, leaving gardens a literal construction site, or not properly fitting any kind of drainage system, or just the lack of design in relation to privacy and neighbours as well. And if you've been in the construction industry for a long time in the UK, or out of the UK, especially if you're retired, I'd love to know why you think quality has deteriorated and what you think about current new build properties. I find it fascinating and, quite frankly, heartbreaking at how we've traded design and craft for efficiency, and honestly, as a whole, as society. I hope that clears up the current cookie-cutter design process, and those of you in America, let me know if it does differ over there. But the overall point I want to get across is that property developers use this copy and paste approach to housing to maximise on profit and minimise effort. I like to kind of think of it as the fast fashion of the housing market. As a side note, if you're enjoying the video so far, please leave a like and hype the video. I really appreciate that. And if you want to connect and support us even further, think about joining our membership. I know this is all very doom and gloom, but as an interior designer, it's literally my job to transform any space, so fear not, because if you're currently living in a white-walled or grey box, I'm going to show you how to perform a much-needed design intervention to give your house some soul. I'm not going to tell you things like add plants and that kind of stuff because I think it kind of goes without saying. But one thing that has been very noticeable to me as a designer is the use of ceiling heights, or rather the lack of. In the UK, new build ceilings tend to be significantly lower than our American counterparts. We're usually working with about 2.4 metres, whereas our friends across the pond often enjoy a much more generous 9 feet or higher. British new build ceilings are so low you can practically high-five someone upstairs from downstairs, so my tips if you're in the UK are to make sure you're pushing the visual height upwards. Now, not all, but most UK builds come with a pendant light fitting, which, in my opinion, just drags everything down. It makes the already low ceiling look even lower. So instead, I'd go for a flush ceiling light. This way you'll expand the space and make the room feel more breathable. Conversely, if you're in North America and have very high ceiling heights in your cookie-cutter home, you really need to utilise that space. Oftentimes, I feel when that atrium gets left bare, that's what gives it that new build look. So I would just make sure to fill it up vertically with a long pendant light or a cascading chandelier, large oversized artwork to take up that wall space, and even some texture added to the focal point. If you have the width as well, a library ladder and a bookcase is the ultimate character hack in my opinion. Even if your top shelves are strictly for show, those long vertical rails break the horizontal monotony and create an immediate sense of grandeur. If you want a space to seem wider or longer, you can actually impose shiplap paneling to the ceiling to create the illusion you're going for, or even thicker wooden exposed beams or a full Vega style. And yes, I know this isn't a new build, but I just want to illustrate how ceiling finishes can lower the height of a space. So if you have low ceilings, don't drag anything downwards, and if you have high ceilings, use them. Don't let your pendant light look like a sad, lonely, hanging grape. One of my top designer tricks, if you want the world to believe your home wasn't built last Tuesday, is to stop buying modern lighting for your modern home. It sounds counterintuitive, but if you're looking for that elevated, modern transitional look, you really need to anchor the room with traditional silhouettes. So think lights like aged brass, library sconces, or even a simple pleated shade. Because in my opinion, when you add a hyper-minimalist ring light to a brand new white room, you aren't really adding anything to the design, you're more so completing the developer's vision. By opting for a light fixture that actually looks like it existed before the invention of the iPhone, you're performing a bit of architectural gaslighting, if you like. And I think this really helps to create a cozy, curated look. If your living room currently looks like a 3D render of an IKEA living room, we need to talk about furniture. I want you to think of your room like a pie chart. Or just a pie. 3/4 of your furniture should be modern looking and the other quarter should be vintage pieces. Or at least pieces that look vintage or aged. You really want pieces to look like they have a storied past, unlike mass market furniture that has the personality of an Excel spreadsheet. I think that 1:4 ratio is a real sweet spot for making a space feel curated rather than cluttered. Places I recommend for more vintage style furniture are Vinteria, Etsy, or even Facebook Marketplace. Or for newer pieces, Pottery Barn, TK Maxx or HomeSense, West Elm, Laura Ashley and Melody Maison and John Lewis if you're in the UK. And since we're on the topic of unflat packing your home, you could also swap out standard hardware, like kitchen handles or doorknobs, for vintage brass ones to carry that authentic feel further. Because almost all new builds in the UK have a standard selection of handles that they just flick between. Now this is a hill I will die on. You absolutely must commit to a cohesive design style before you spend 10 quid on a cushion. In a new build that has zero architectural context to guide you, your design style is the only thing to actually give you a sense of design direction. Having a kind of North Star just ensures that everything looks like it was actually meant to be there. And calling your interior eclectic is a design crime that I'm simply not willing to accept. Whilst it might be eclectic in the sense of you've bought lots of different things and it's lots of different colours, I can almost guarantee you that the furniture or patterns will actually lean towards some kind of design style. And your home doesn't have to be something so set in stone like Art Deco or coastal. It can be things like transitional, cozy farmhouse, Nancy Meyers style, modern bohemian. It can be anything you want, but just make sure that you identify those parameters clearly so that you have a vision to work with. If your home currently looks like it was designed by someone that has a severe fear to curves, it's time to add some architectural intrigue. Most new builds arrive with walls that meet the ceiling in a way that feels very aggressively unfinished and very bog standard. There's no kind of finesse, right? Mainly because developers treat cornicing like it's a luxury that they're not going to pay for. Adding a simple coving or substantial cornice gives your room a proper injection of character. It frames the space and masks the awkwardness of those 90-degree plasterboard corners. But if you want to take that one step further, I would actually suggest to change your rectangular door frames to soft archways. That will instantly change the mood of the space. It's the structural shake-up that softens the flow of the house and tricks the brain into thinking your home was designed by a person, not a robot. And not that it matters, but I also think arched doorways and walls are very chic. Then we have the windows, and if they were any more basic, they'd be wearing Ugg boots and drinking a pumpkin spice latte. Or maybe it's an iced matcha now that it's spring. Standard PVC windows can be very boring, and this is a dead giveaway that the house is a cookie cutter type. Or you have a slightly older home that has this dated type of window with texturized glass panels. I always think it looks like a oil spill, these 80s windows. Adding transoms, grid panes, darker frames, or even deeper trim work gives windows presence and helps create that layered, custom home feel people can't quite put their finger on. I know it seems subtle, but it completely shifts how the house reads architecturally. And my last point in relation to interior architecture is the staircase. please do something interesting with the staircase. In so many new builds, the staircase is often treated purely as a functional object, which is a shame really, because it's often one of the first things you see when you walk into a new build. At least in the UK. My advice to you is to upgrade the balustrades, add wall panelling along the stair wall, showcase artwork along the wall, or even incorporate a curved handrail detail to give it some drama. Tip number 6 is all about the kitchen. I always think that they're the most standout new build feature and usually stick out like a sore thumb. I'm just generalising here, but usually they're handleless, shiny surfaced, and again I'm really generalising here, but grey as well. Those gloss white or grey cabinets tend to congregate in new builds, hence that's why they come across as soulless. If you aren't ready to rip out the whole thing, which I can understand, painting your cabinets in a two-tone scheme is the ultimate designer bypass. To finish the look, ditch those handleless doors that look like a gym locker and add in some interesting hardware. Finish the space with some open shelving for your cookbooks and curated knickknacks. That will really level up the kitchen. Another huge reason why cookie cutter homes feel flat is because every surface has the same texture or the same tone. Smooth white walls, smooth grey floors, smooth cabinetry. You know where I'm going with this? And I know some people love that kind of look, but to me it reminds me of a GP office. Layering textures and patterns will solve this dilemma. If you're starting with a plain white box with a neutral carpet or a laminate floor, think stone veneer on a fireplace wall, colourful paint, textured wallpapers, an array of different fabrics, aged metals, or mixing different wood tones throughout the space, instead of matching every piece of furniture like a furniture showroom from 2009. Contrast is what's going to give your home depth and personality. When everything is perfectly uniform, it can start to feel very weirdly sterile. Another tip to avoid actually, in the UK specifically, is to not fall into the trap of putting a funky wallpaper on only one wall. Whilst I think this will look good in a room that has a large floor space, most new builds are actually built quite small, so what actually happens is the wallpaper just ends up cutting the room in half visually. Like this bedroom, where it's drawn the wall more forward. Or this kids' room, where it's pulled the wall in from the left. So just keep these things in mind. But what do you think about new build cookie cutter homes? Let me know down below. Please leave a like and hype if you enjoyed the video. I really appreciate it, and it really does help to grow the channel. And if you need help fulfilling your own design dreams, I've left our website in the description. If you want to keep the design inspiration flowing though, our video on where to actually start when designing a home, so if you've got no kind of clue, I'll leave that on the next part. But that's it for today. Bye guys.